Most foreigners arrive in the U.S. unaware that without African Americans, they wouldn't have any cell phones, GPS, elevators, working light bulbs, airplanes, automobiles, helicopters, refrigerators, and so much more. Most instead arrive in the U.S. looking down upon African Americans. There's a reason for everything we're experiencing. You just don't know it. This is why those who know the truth must teach African proverb. Many people come to the U.S. from the poorest countries around the world, believing that they are inherently better than African Americans. This video will explain why so many people come here looking down upon African Americans. The most common preconceived notion that these people bring with them are that African Americans are the lazy leeches of society that commits most crimes. Both of those statements are totally the opposite of the truth. These noted perceptions held by people arriving in the U.S. from around the world are too widespread to be coincidental. It's by deliberate design. Those preconceived notions that many people bring with them to the U.S. about African Americans were embedded into their minds through global media outlets controlled by the white society. The problem with this scenario is that the media lens through which these people are interpreting African Americans are being deliberately negatively distorted to create societal consent for the U.S. white society's mistreatments of African Americans. It's a nefarious propaganda tactic called manufactured consent to mistreat. Manufactured consent to mistreat is a propaganda tactic used whenever those in power wants to create societal consent for the mistreatment of a targeted population. They use the media to portray the targeted population as being a major problem of the society through manufactured false news reports. They vilify, criminalize, and dehumanize the targeted population in order to make others insensitive to their plight. This subsequently creates a consensual national setting that allows the mistreatment of the targeted population. What manufactured consent to mistreat more simply means is to turn a targeted population into a fearsome enemy of society through false, negative, vilifying news reports, propaganda, then using the false, negative, distorted depiction of the group to falsely justify mistreating and even killing them. It's a warfare tactic that was originally deployed against the Jews by Adolf Hitler's head Nazi minister of propaganda named Joseph Goebbels to facilitate his mistreatment of the Jews. Here's why it was deemed necessary to manufacture societal consent for the mistreatment of African Americans. The success of the 1960s civil rights movement was greatly due to the national and global support that was attained by Dr. King's nonviolent strategies. Once those images of America's black population being brutalized with fire hoses, police batons, and canine dogs for merely peacefully seeking to be treated with the basic principle of human dignity, once those images were aired on America's nightly news, they gained national and global support for the plight of African Americans. The global response in support of African Americans were immense. Dr. King was even awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent efforts in pursuit for full equality for African Americans. African Americans were favorably perceived by millions of people around the world as a dignified people pursuing an equality that we should have been born with. These global responses in support of African Americans totally embarrassed the U.S. government. It also eroded its global image and standing in the world. White oppressive forces realized then that to continue their subjugation of African Americans as a means of maintaining the U.S. white social dominance, it had become necessary to manufacture societal consent to do so. They met this objective by implementing a manufactured consent propaganda campaign against African Americans. Through lies and manufactured news reports, African Americans are being portrayed as a major problem of the white society. We're being made to look like we're a part of a treacherous, frightening, and almost insane fringe, thereby creating a false impression of wanton black criminality and violence. This creates prejudice, distorted perceptions, and incriminating beliefs about African Americans that are designed to make the nation and the entire world insensitive to our plight, tranquilize efforts on our behalf, and makes any serious criticism of white racism today now almost impossible. When contempt of African Americans is made to appear justifiable, this creates conditioned responses within the nation that allows eventualities to unfold against African Americans without opposition or resentment. This is very evident within the U.S. criminal justice system, wherein which African Americans are disproportionately incarcerated, given stiffer sentences, and are more likely than any other racial group to be treated brutally, beaten, and fired upon by police officers while unarmed. This propaganda campaign is the reason why it is possible for white cops to routinely kill unarmed innocent black people, even when these murders are captured on film, and still avoid being indicted by merely saying that they were in fear of losing their lives. Furthermore, it creates a consensual national setting wherein which witnesses, bystanders, and even world audiences will now sit by idle, allowing African Americans to be brutally mistreated under the belief that it's all now justified. This propaganda campaign also allows the white society to use African Americans as its most ticketed and fined groups that generates millions of revenues to many cities across the nation, such as witnessed by the fact that the majority of people you usually find in traffic courts are usually predominantly black, even when most of the drivers in the city are predominantly white. Black people are constant revenue generators for many white cities across the nation. These injustices now most often goes ignored because the perception has collectively become that it's all justified. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. It has the power to make the innocent guilty and make the guilty innocent. Media has the power to influence minds, ideas, behaviors, and attitudes of the masses. That's immense power. That's a quote from Malcolm X. Those black people who now insist that we are our own worst enemies does so because they are ignorant of our reality. They are ignorant of the tactics that have been deployed against us. When the blatant methods used in the past for subjugating black people became no longer socially acceptable with the changing times, the white society did not abandon its tactics, its practices of developing systems against black people. They merely developed more covert, more sophisticated methods that are not as easily recognized by the black victims. White racism works best when the black victims no longer recognizes it. This is why those who know must teach. African proverb. One love and peace.